This video is an extract from an interview where an art professional shares their top tips for artists. Thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoy this video. Hi, welcome to this session. We're going to talk all about public commissions. This session is going to share Penny's decades of experience to really fast track your success.
Before I start, let me just define what I mean by a public commission. My definition is this is a project whereby a commissioner sets a brief for artists to respond, or might just be one artist, to which will lead to the appointment of an artist who is contracted to make a work that will be in a public area. So I'm going to start with a little background on work in public commissioning that we've worked on and what we've learnt, and therefore passed my experiences on, that I think will be very useful to you. In 2002, we worked on our very first public commission, and we were employed by the Joa Charitable Foundation as project managers. And the commission resulted in a work by Sakari Douglas Camp, which was placed outside of the Commonwealth Institute. And I've got to be honest, it was a baptism of fire, because up until then, we'd worked on private commissions, and we were suddenly faced with, rather than one nice, easy commissioner, with stakeholders. And in this case, it was Chelsea and Westminster Council, the commissioner, Joa Charitable Foundation, the Commonwealth Institute, who are actually the hosts, the public, and that's not forgetting the artist as well. So we had not one, but 5 very loud voices. And our top tips that we're extricating from these experiences is, when you go into a public commission, just recognise that you'll have more than one audience to satisfy. And that's a very important thing. And then one of our other earliest works in public commissioning was in Chinatown, where we worked with the landlord's Shaftesbury estate, who commissioned a series of public works. This was a particularly challenging project because it being on a very busy road, on a junction, where we had to negotiate overnight road closures. Top tip here, or what it taught us very early on, public commissions can be really risky. So safety and potential liabilities are an incredibly important thing. So as a result of working on these big commissions, it became very evident to us that they are really risky. And there's a number of reasons, and it's a really good idea to talk through these reasons, because it might show you why you're perhaps either not getting them, or it will prepare you for when you do go after a public commission. One, and I don't want to be dramatic, but they are dangerous. You could actually kill someone, and accidents can and do happen. And because they are in the public realm, they can incite negative public opinion. And this can be extremely upsetting for artists. And my third point here would be, you can go dramatically over budget. I mean, you can make either no money at all. And I, unfortunately, do know a lot of artists where the artists have spent more money than they've actually earned on the project. And then public commissions are very time consuming. They're all absorbing, and sometimes they can halt your practice in other ways. And I think in terms of talking about risk, we can actually give you an example of a risk that actually happened, which is when Thomas Heatherwick had a piece of work in Manchester, which was actually nicknamed Firework, and it actually failed. And it's public knowledge that he got sued, his studio got sued, the commissioner got sued. So these things can go horribly wrong. However, on the upside, why you might consider public commissions is they are very rewarding. They can be incredibly technically challenging, but achieving it can be the pinnacle of an artist's career. Also, they can leave a very important legacy. It's like having work in a museum. It's great exposure for you as well. Once you've done one work, it's an advert for your work. And of course, it proves that you've got a track record, because once you've made something and you've done a public commission, then it's easier to get more public commissions. We're going to move on to the second piece, made with a well-known sound artist called Chris Watson, and he recreated the sound of 2000 ravens roosting in a forest, and it culminated in a 3-night performance where we led each night 50 people at dusk. So it was quite dangerous because we were taking them in through paths in the forest that we hadn't been able to completely clear. It was a forest setting, and they lay on the floor and they listened to this hour-long sound performance of these ravens roosting. I think in terms of what I can pass on to you is Chris Watson was a very experienced sound engineer. He was actually David Attenborough's sound recordist, so he was an amazing chap. But what was really interesting was how things don't necessarily go to plan when you're in different situations. So when we started practicing in the actual forest, we discovered that the sound quality, who would have known that the wind was going to alter the sound so dramatically? So we worked very closely with experts who would be able to react in real time to the direction of the wind, so things could be tweaked from the ground. So my top tip here is knowing when to bring in experts. And this might, obviously in this case it was sound engineers, but there will be other instances where experts are absolutely crucial to the outcome of these projects.
So you've shared some really useful tips to fast track your decades of experience and help artists consider getting into public commissions or having a successful future public commission. So what are the important things to consider when you approach this topic?
I wanted to pick out a few things that I think are really important, which is responding to a brief. And it's very important to understand the brief. And it's not always easy because the brief, to be honest with you, isn't always great. I recently helped an artist with a brief that had been put out by a local council, and it was really poorly written. And commissioning is a really complex area and it's fraught with potential issues. I think part of the reason is when they're writing the brief, the commissioners often try to leave it. They don't want to be prescriptive, so they leave it far too loose. And that makes it very difficult for the artist to interpret. And I also think the truth is that a lot of commissioners don't actually know what they want until the proposals come in. And then they realise, this is what I can get. And I know that sounds awful, but unless you're an experienced commissioner or you've got a really good project manager on the commissioning side, there are an awful lot of commissioners just putting these briefs out there without having that expertise. So I know some of the artists read this and think, I'm not reading it properly. Actually, it's not that. So I highly recommend that you take these points that I'm going to make of what should be included in the brief. So a good brief will always have the overall vision, so aims and objectives. It will always have some context, which will help you with your response. So history, background to projects, that kind of thing. It should have some information on the commissioner, some details on them, so you know who's actually commissioning the work. It should always have the physical or technical constraints. It should have the role of the artist. Are they going to be responsible for everything? What is the project management structure? Who are you going to be answerable to? Talking about copyright and ownership, this is particular prep drawings and things like that, and the actual piece. Budget, what is and isn't included, a proper time frame, key dates, and then a list of what the artist needs to deliver. So what will you need to do? Will you need to, for instance, have a detailed budget, but what detail of budget will you have to do? Will you have to do initial drawings and designs and documentation to the commissioner? So what exactly will you need to deliver? And then, very importantly, about maintenance and decommissioning responsibilities. Now, if any of this information is missing or lacks clarity, do not be frightened of asking these questions of the commissioner, because quite frankly, without this key information, you really shouldn't apply. So when I'm helping artists, we go through these points. Do we know what these are? If we don't, we either contact the commissioner or we address them in the response to the brief, so that it shows that the commissioner might not have thought of them, but we have. And it shows that you really know what you're talking about in terms of a commission. And don't forget, at this point of the process, there's a difference between the brief and the contract. So the brief is what the commissioner wants ideally from the project, but the contract is the important thing because it's what the artist and the commissioner have agreed to deliver. And remember, once the contract is signed, then you're committed. The brief's important because it's obviously going to win the commission with the brief, but the contract is really important. And never, ever go into a public commission without a contract that you're happy with.
Thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch the full 1-hour interview and get top tips from an expert, then click the link below and join the Art Ladder mentoring program now. By joining the Art Ladder, you will get access to our full library of webinars with curators, collectors, critics, gallerists, and more. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this, and check out the description below for more free resources for artists.